Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the show.
Yeah. There's a, Buster Olney's got this Baseball Tonight podcast, and Dave Schoenfield, when he's a guest, their whole intro is, "Welcome to the show." So there we go.
Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, the weather's kind of typical March weather, right? Kind of up, kind of down.
Yep. They're lying to you about it being spring.
Yeah.
It's a great deception. During the day, we're springish. Night, dead of winter.
Yeah, it's I keep saying like, okay, I'm trying to use my heater less and less, but Mother Nature keeps saying, okay, you got to turn that heater on.
That's right.
It's still a little chilly, and but by and by, I'll still take 35 to 40 degree temperatures overnight instead of 10, right, or 20.
Right, that's right.
And frost. So
I mean, we had that it snowed like the 3rd or 4th of January, and that snow didn't move for a month.
Yeah,
it stood right there, frozen, same place on the ground for a month. We sort of got it out of the way a little bit, and that was it. It just sat there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the way to do it. Let it snow once, hang around for a month, and then we'll say, "Be gone," and we'll start getting ready for spring and everything like that.
And then we got another one, but it went away pretty quick.
The last one was much shorter in duration. Much more like what we like to, we kind of expect. It snows, we might shovel, sun comes out, melts off a lot of it. It's gone in a few days, and you're done. But like you said, that other one, it just refused to go away. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm trying to get ready for spring. I'm trying to be a good homeowner. I've got that. I'm talking with my wife about how much mulch we need to buy for the backyard. We haven't put anything down there in a while. I'm like, do we need 50 bags? And she goes, at least. I'm like, okay. Well, your car will fit maybe 10 at a time. So if you want to save money, you run to Home Depot and just keep running up back and forth or something like that until you get all the bags you need.
Well, can't you get people to just bring you some?
Yeah, you could. I mean, if you could do the nursery route, but that's still more expensive to do. And she doesn't like the kind of mulch the nursery has. She really wants her pine bark mulch. A lot of times a nursery has the stuff that you see in landscaping, which is not pine bark. So, because I went to our local nursery, but I guess the other side of it is that you could. I don't know how much it costs. I think you could probably rent the little Home Depot truck, load it up, take it, unload it, and then bring it back. But I have no idea.
Another one is Marty's football team sells mulch, and they're not the only ones. There's a lot of clubs, teams, or whatever that sell it as a fundraiser, and they the kids' job in this is to bring it over. So it's generally a fair price. They don't want to lose business from it being too expensive. It's not going to be the cheapest because they're trying to make a little money,
right? This is fundraising
for the organization, but the kids bring it over, and you at least don't have to make 10 runs to the store,
right? Yeah, but it needs to be pine bark mulch. So I don't know. It's like, okay, I would have been fine with the stuff the landscapers put on the common area around the neighborhood. It's like.
Yeah, I've never heard of people being particular about the bark of the mulch, but
So my thing about that is just that we're talking about the backyard area where there's basically nothing but trees, and it's not. We're supposed to maintain it, but it's really kind of under the governance of the Park Service. So I mean, that's why we can't cut down any trees higher than 6 feet tall and stuff like that. There's some restrictions. It's like, well, why can't I just buy why can't I just buy things that are easier to get? Just have them delivered, just lay it all down and be done with it, rather than having to fuss around saying, I've got to have that specific mulch. It's anyway, Look, I've been married almost 40 years. I will obey.
That's not where you plant your flag.
Yeah, that's
no,
exactly
honey, we're fighting it out. No more pine bark mulch for me.
The marriage ended over an argument over
Yeah.
pine bark mulch. Okay, no.
Pine bark mulch.
Kids are like, "What's going on, Mom, Dad?"
What?
Oh, we couldn't agree on the pine bark mulch.
Yeah, I thought I had him trained.
Yeah, so I was like, that's like you said. I'm not gonna play. I'm not gonna. That's not the hill I want to die on.
That's right.
All right, so I guess we always have a little bit of news. Somebody's always making some news and noise and whatever. We'll start off and then we'll bounce around like we usually do. We'll go ahead and start off, I guess, actually with the whole uproar over the Signal chat group that has gotten everybody into a tizzy, particularly the liberal left. But it does. I just want my short comment is like it does make me wonder exactly what the heck they were doing. So,
okay, so here's my only thing about that. For people who don't understand, Signal is an app where it's like for people to have conversations. Basically, it doesn't really contribute anything except for sort of privacy, right? And Biden, it's become a modern convenience of White Houses, members of Congress, staffers. The Biden administration used it extensively. So they're having a chat on this thing, and they have Hegseth, they have J.D. Vance, they have Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, Marco Rubio, Susie Wiles, maybe, some people like that. So like the national security facing officials of the administration, and somehow Jeffrey Goldberg got added to this call. I mean, that made one of the persons on the string of email of text. You're texting each other basically. Got on there. Okay, now if it was any other, if you say, okay, what's her name, Katie, from CNN that covers the White House, the girl from Alabama. Okay, if she ends up there, Maggie Haberman ends up there, Nicole Wallace ends up on there. Okay, someone made a terrible mistake, right? Trump hater Kate Collins, isn't that her name?
Caitlin Collins. Caitlin
Collins, right? So if this involved them, you'd say, okay, White House made a terrible mistake. Find out who did it, fire him, right? But Jeffrey Goldberg, right? The Russia collusion hoax was him. He was, there from the start of making that happen. He knew it was a lie, forwarded it. Suckers and Losers is based on a story that he wrote that's based on two anonymous sources. There's no one who actually heard Trump say this who go on the record and admit it. There's all kind of people on the record saying I was with Trump the whole time and he did not say it. But there's no one will put their name to, yes, I heard him say it. Even now, even today, with Biden out of office and everything like it is. So it being that particular guy makes me wonder, like, what happened here? Okay, how did he get up there? Mike Waltz, I guess, is the national security advisor, said it came through his phone, but he did not know who Jeffrey Goldberg was at all, right? So, which is also kind of troubling because, if you're going to be, national security advisor in a Trump administration, this is a threat that you need to be aware of, right? This is a guy willing to lie, to undermine Trump, lie, hurt the country, whatever. If it hurts Trump, it's fine by him. So, you gotta understand that if you're the director, if you're the national security advisor. So that part of this is a little troubling to me, but so what they got was a conversation among them saying whether we should do this now or a month from now. At some point, Pete Hegseth added to the conversation like a update report on where things stood. Like we attacked at 9:55 and this and that and the other. So what they have, it's too late for the Houthis to make any use of it because the acts it describes had already taken place. So it's not like we gave them a heads up on something that they could have prevented or done more damage to our troops or whatever. It was too late. So, it's much ado about very little, but it is going to be much ado for a few days.
Yeah. So, Signal, the funny thing about this, and to me in a little bit, just personally, was that it reminded me I'm part of a Signal group that I completely forgot about. And actually, I went in yesterday trying to get back into that group. And I was having all kinds of issues because it only works on like one device at a time or something or other. And
right.
So I was just having all kinds of issues. And I've got it on this computer I'm using to broadcast from, but I wanted to delete it and start all over again because I want to take in like all my phone contacts. I was like, I don't want all my phone contacts in it. There were just a handful of us, kind of Republicans in a small little group that somebody had set up, and I would occasionally chime in, but I had completely forgotten about it. And now I'm just like, oh, this is such a pain in the neck. So, so Signal is an app. You have to have the phone number in order to add the person. It's all phone number based. So you have to have that to put someone in the group. It's end-to-end encrypted, which is that. So, when you're composing the document, you're obviously not encrypted. But as soon as you send your comments or your whatever, that now becomes a scramble, and then it's unscrambled at the other end, in essence, for the other user, the recipient, so that they can see what goes on there. But there's it's pretty tight security wise. I think concerns are like you said. I mean, how that happened is a little troubling. It's like, Mike Walls is taking responsibility that because it came from his phone, that he's going to take responsibility, which he probably should at this point in time. But there probably will be some investigation, at least, to say how did this happen?
Right. I'm really curious how it happened.
Yeah,
rando accident does not ring true to me. It's all this is a little on the nose. Trump's like one of Trump's most active critics, right? A guy who's demonstrated he would do anything to get Trump, even lie, illegal stuff, whatever, to get Trump. He's the guy who ends up on the call, right? So, if it's him or Norm Eisen, I think this looks a lot different than if it was really anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a sworn enemy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Goldberg, you're like, I've just hit a jackpot because somebody inadvertently added me to this chat, and now I get to see a little bit of their thinking as to what's going on here. I'm not going to reveal any secrets, things that for events that haven't already occurred. I mean, I think at least on that end. But I mean, I think there are concerns about questions are if they're using this method, if they're using Signal, are they using it just when they're here in the United States, or if they're traveling to other foreign countries?
So somebody who was in on this, who was in on this chain, was in Russia, was texting into it from Russia. So it's not
that's a little troubling to me, only because it's just if there are people who are going to be able to hack into your system and try to figure a way to break into Signal or something like that, it's those kind of guys that will say there'll be some. If you don't think that the Russian government isn't, or even the Chinese government isn't trying to find, do espionage of some sort, then your head's in the sand.
Always and forever. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's on them too. We're spying on them.
Yeah, right. That's the way the world works. It's a constant thing about that, and that's why the military. That's why we have SCIFs to basically silo people off, for these kinds of things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think, even the Wall Street Journal, I think, wrote an editorial this morning. I mean, in essence, is just this will disappear, in short order, because we'll be moving on to something else. And the Democrats, for all their howling and whatnot, they're really not going to be able to get much out of this. Okay,
right. That's right. They want to investigate it. I don't know. The House, the chairman of the committees don't have to allow an investigation. And what are you investigating? That's
Right.
so you can tell me who put him on there. That's all anybody cares about anyway.
Yeah, and they asked Trump about it, and Trump's not in the chat, and he's like, I don't know who this guy is or whatever, and made some
Well,
slur.
he said, I didn't know about this tweet.
Yeah,
He didn't
yeah,
know. He definitely knows who Jeffrey Goldberg is.
yeah, but he didn't. Yeah, so but he wasn't aware of the situation and things like that, and so it's kind of vintage Trump, and because that to me was just a thing about we want to get you. We want to know how much you knew about this. Was just all of this that they were using this, blah 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 blah. So but I think that's falling on its face for the large part, and it's for the Democrats, it's a good distraction because they're still fighting amongst themselves and still struggling with a lot of other issues, and they're like, oh look, we got this massive security breach scandal, and I'm like, yeah, I mean there's some disconcerting issues, but this is not I'm more concerned about Hillary Clinton, and her email servers. I mean that to me was much more disconcerting than this.
Right. She was trying to cover up a crime.
Yeah.
These guys, exactly what they were doing on there. It's public knowledge, and
right.
what they're doing is actually pretty edifying, right? They're having a level-headed discussion about an armed assault on another country, and there are people in there arguing. If you've read it, say, hey, we could wait a month to do this, right? I mean, if president wants to do it now, we'll support, right? But if we could wait a month, we could wait a month. Doesn't look like they're pressing us to do this right now. And you could make the argument that things may get better. We may not have to do this, blah, blah, blah. So it's a fairly thoughtful discussion amongst pretty serious people.
Yeah, and I don't know if JD Vance's numbers were correct in that chat or whatever, but he did kind of crack me up. It's like, oh, I don't want to bail out the Europeans again.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So I mean, we definitely know what he thinks.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what we're doing, right? And, and it's okay. Let them hear that. Like, we look at you as someone we're bailing out, right? We don't look at you as an equal partner. We look at you as someone we take care of, right? You don't want that, you fix that. It's going to cost about $1 trillion.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's this is a kerfuffle that hopefully will go away. I mean, I think one of the reasons it goes away is because Trump has kind of got this whole machine gun out here, and he keeps firing stuff away. And the Democrats just, if they, like everything else, we've talked about this, is like, they focus on one thing. Trump's already like 5 miles ahead of them on something else. There's a bunch of other things that are out there, and they're over here, and so they're worlds apart. The Democrats cannot keep up. The liberal media cannot keep up with what the Trump administration is doing, and so this is this moment in time that we will move on from, and then something else will come up, and then. But I don't know how the Democrats ever really catch up to Trump at this point.
Right. I mean, right. They're in trouble on Trump now, which will cost them at least one more election.
Yeah.
Right. They're in bad shape for 2026.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they got people leaving that they didn't realize were leaving, and so I mean, their ability to defend, in 2026 is going to be a little tougher. The House is always kind of a crapshoot. Sometimes you never know about voter sentiment one way or the other. The Republicans probably are going to be okay, but the hope for any Democrat control of the Senate is probably now definitely gone with some of these recent announcements. As they have to find other candidates to fill these slots, and that'll be more trouble than the Republicans will have in 2026. And we still have a long runway before the election 2026. Who knows what else is going to happen along the way?
Right. The other thing is like Trump has taken his medicine now on the economy. Right. You can see prices are coming down on gas, groceries, all that kind of stuff. But the stock market is still coming down. As you had something in there about consumer confidence is low. Right. But that's this is 1981, right? As Reagan's first year, he baptized the economy. He held it underwater, counted to 3, said the incantation, incantations and let it back up, and then it was healthy again. It was saved, right? So that's basically what's going on now, is the economy's getting baptized, and the public money that was propping it up is being shaken out of it, which explains what's going on with the stock market. But the fundamentals of it are starting to come back. The other thing you had in there was a bunch of Hyundai, I think, said they're building a big plant. There's 2 or 3 other auto plants that have been announced in the last week. Computer companies, other like tech companies promising to spend billions and billions of dollars here to build businesses and grow businesses. People are trying to get around that tariff before that happens on April 2nd and get established that they're doing business in the USA and hopefully avoid some of that. Because the Democrats are not taking this seriously. They think it's just a drag on the economy. It's a tax that we will all pay, right? But the rest of the world is like, oh no, they better not do this to us. It will give them a big advantage over us. We must stop them. So I think the rest of the world is looking at this realistically, and the others are looking at it as Trump haters. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Looks like
No, go ahead.
So, I think that by the time the midterms roll around in 2026, you'll see job growth, you'll see economic growth north of 4%, the stock market back, inflation down where it was before, gas prices back down to $2 a gallon. That's going to be hard for the Democrats to win.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some immediate effect with tariffs on the stock market, and the market has been basically choppy, as we call it, because
right.
it goes up one day, it goes down another day. Sometimes you have a few losing days in a row. I mean, but so the market has just not done much of anything overall.
It's not collapsing.
Right. It's not collapsing, and it, after the election, it had roared ahead, and it kind of had gotten ahead of itself. The optimism about Trump winning and what it would mean for the business climate and everything like that. Then finally, as things settle in and the policies start coming down, they realize, okay, well, it's not going to be quite like that. There's going to be some pain, that Trump feels that needs to be involved here in order to kind of straighten things out. And there hasn't been a president in my lifetime that's been really, maybe Reagan, I guess, that's been willing to go ahead and say, we need to do these things. It's going to hurt. But we got to do these things to kind of set the course and set the ship right going forward. And so it's like my investments are probably going pretty much. I mean, I think they're just pretty much treading water. But I haven't lost my shirt or anything like that. So it's just, people have to realize it. I read the Wall Street Journal every day, and then they run these articles, from time to time about people who are in the market, and this happens every time the market has these downturns, is that they're panic and what they're going to do, and they're pulling all their money out of the market, and it's like, those are the dumb investors, because history has proven that you just stay the course, that and it's not like you pull out when it's down and come back when you think it's coming back. Is that if you stick with it, you will actually do better over time than you will if you basically had converted everything to cash or whatever and stuff like that. So, but it does. I think this is a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome for some of these investors, is that they've got Trump in their head and they think that he's going to be bad for the economy, and they can't get away from that. But Trump, I mean, Trump is, he has a limited effect on the economy in the long run. I mean, businesses are the ones that will determine how things go. They will adjust their business plans. We've seen inventory buildups of people trying to get their goods in here before other tariffs hit. Trump has even talked about, moderating, some of the tariffs. He's looking more for, reciprocal tit for tat type of things, not, if you're not,
that's what Besant said, his favorite word is tariffs and his second favorite word is reciprocal.
Yeah.
What he's trying to do is use it as a weapon. Like, if you'll change your trade rules and you'll be fair to Americans, then we won't put tariffs on you. Right? We're just doing it to get our way. If you give us our way, then we won't do it. So, look for a lot of tariffs to go on April 2nd and a lot to come off. As country, you can already see some countries starting to comply, starting to try to to change trade policy toward the U.S. and their leading merchants, their leading conglomerates and whatnot, trying to get, domiciled in the U.S. before this starts taking effect.
Yeah, and we're seeing it's been interesting because the other thing too is that, the bigger companies that buy lots of goods, Walmart, Costco, whatever, they've been putting pressure on their Chinese suppliers to lower their prices or give them discounts to try to soften the tariff blow. And lo and behold, a lot of them have given back some of that. If there's a 10% tariff coming, they might give them 5% off to lighten that blow, which means that prices might go up here, or prices might get absorbed a little bit more, and the prices will barely nudge. Every company, every retailer or whatever, they will make their own decisions about how to implement any potential price increases that are a result of tariffs. Smaller businesses don't have necessarily as much leeway, but it does cause them to be. Now, the thing too is that even during the pandemic, there was a lot of rethinking about supply chains, China not moving away from China and things like that. So there's a lot of things that have already moved to, say, Vietnam and other countries. That more movement will probably take place as a result of this. China still probably needs to be a supplier for some things, but if you work hard enough at it and look, you can probably find just about anything you need elsewhere.
That's what's going on. Like, why does he care about Greenland and all this? He's trying to get stuff that otherwise you can't get from China.
Yeah,
so he's trying to make us not need China.
I'll have a T-shirt made in Greenland on the label. Hadn't thought about it until now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
if you think about Greenland now, I read a thing a few years ago before Trump started talking about getting Greenland, and it was like how many kids there were sniffing gas and all this kind of stuff, because there's really no future, right? It's 52,000 people. The main industry is collecting welfare from Denmark. They don't make any effort to make any industry out of the place because they don't really care, right? And so, Trump's saying, hey, we'll mine, we'll drill for oil, we'll extract minerals, you'll have jobs, you'll work, you'll get your own money, you won't be dependent on welfare. So it's kind of a hard pull, right? There's a lot of people like, yeah, it really makes us a lot freer, right? But a lot of people would rather be comfortable than free. So,
well, I mean, look, when you have spent decades, whatever the length of time, I mean, all the time, and you've basically been living off of another country's just sending you money to keep you propped up, your people propped up. So this, to sit back and just do nothing, is really easy. I mean, look at our welfare state. I mean, how many people are on our welfare system? Every time, when we go in and we try to do some kind of workfare, liberals get all like, oh, you can't do this, they get all upset, and it's like, you can't, that's cruel and inhumane and stuff like that. It's like, no, we want to make these people productive members of our society rather than just
hand up, not a handout.
Right.
Everybody's willing to say, oh, something bad happened to you. You got laid off, you lost your job, whatever. We'll help you for a little while till you get back on your feet, right? America is not fighting that idea. The idea America is fighting is, you never bother to look for a job and you just live off us forever and ever.
Well, right. And COVID made a lot of that worse for us because, so many extensions of so many different things. You didn't have to pay back your student loan debt. There was a suspension on that. Unemployment benefits, there were so many extensions of that, in terms of, instead of being 6 months, they went to a year or more. Just a lot of government policies that just allowed people to collect money for doing nothing. Zippo, and then, for what benefit? It doesn't help them at all.
Well, there was a point where we didn't really have a choice, right? They didn't want to let people go to work.
Right.
Which ended up not being a smart thing to do, but we didn't know it at the time, right? I mean, if you think about almost all the bad decisions we made were made early in the process when we really didn't know what we were dealing with. We didn't know how deadly it was or was not. but you have, now you have a situation where people learned, as you say, that you could, your work day could be doing nothing, right? And you still get the same money, like, the PPP loans and so forth. So now when you tell those people, okay, you have to go back to doing work, right? At first it was just, you got to, start turning your computer on again and, doing whatever it is you do on your computer. Now it's physically get off your behind and go to the office and do work, right? And so that's an adjustment to come back from that. My dad told me when I was a kid, he goes, if you ever get out of, the habit of working 5 days a week, it will be very difficult to get yourself back into it, right? So it was like, keep working, keep school, keep, never just stop in life, right? And that was his kind of message or whatever. So, and to me, that's the deal is, I think he was right about that, is like, people stopped working, they sort of atrophied their work ethic, so to speak. And now, you have to turn it back on. And the people who turned it back on, went right back. Most people, they have a good work ethic and they go back to doing their jobs, right? But you have a lot of people now that's not part of the social contract with them anymore, right? That, how dare you expect this of me? So, it's getting turned. But one of the things that's happened in public opinion now is like, people appreciate waste now. The people who made this transition away from working their butt off every day and now had to make it back again are really resentful of the people who have not made it back again, right? And so, like, like Elon's popularity, this was polled last week, 56% for, 31% against. Okay, large amount of I don't knows, right? Popularity for what Doge is doing, eliminating waste, like going into government agencies, saying these things are wasteful, getting them taken out of government, is almost 70%, right? They cannot win elections campaigning against Doge. That's why you're going to hear it masked as every other little thing. And like, if you look at the Washington Post this morning or yesterday, especially, the front of the Washington Post was 4 stories on people being hurt by the Trump cuts, right? I called this bureau at 9:00 every morning and they filled out my whatever report. And now, they don't have as many people to answer the phone. So I don't get through till 9:30. And, that 30 minutes is ruining my life or whatever, right? Those stories are all over the paper every day now because they're trying to show you that these very popular cuts are not, are somehow not popular, right? They're lying about popularity. So, that's part of what's going on now. And, I think like we've talked about this before, rare moment in history where there's really a lot of propaganda going around from the left, but it's not landing, right? People are like, nope, we do want to get rid of waste. Yeah. Elon, he may be a little harsh in how he does it, but, we don't care. We want rid of the waste. And we now see what the waste is, and we see what it's doing to us. It's a pivotal political moment in the country.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, it's like, so the journal has written several articles about people that have been affected by the cuts, lost their jobs, over probationary employees or, things like that. People, some of them, the thing about probationary employees, unfortunately is just that some of them had other jobs in the government and they switched over to something else. So they were probationary in the sense that they were new to those tasks, but they were not new to the government necessarily.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of them still lost their jobs, even though they had been kind of veteran government employees. But what I thought was interesting as I read a lot of these is that several of the people that had been interviewed actually had been Trump voters. I think one guy had voted for Trump 3 times. He did not, at least in the article, there was no indication that he hated Trump now or anything like that. I mean, he was still for the general effort of Doge and
right. And a lot of these, they go looking for that. Like, right. They go find somebody who voted for Trump. Aren't you mad now that he took your job and did this and that? And they're like, no, that's what we elected him to do.
Yeah, I mean, he's this person. I know there was at least one person. I mean, unhappy about losing their job, but did not say that they would never support Trump or the administration again. they took that all with a grain of salt, understanding, what this is all about.
Right.
Once again, as I've said before, I think the cuts probably could have been made a little better. I mean, a little more strategic than some of the way that some of the things have been done. But as a whole, I think people understand what's going on here in terms of this, and whether or not the courts force the administration to take some of these people back or all these people back. I mean, there's just going to be a lot of court cases about a lot of things with the administration as he keeps throwing all these things out, and challenging the establishment. Say, we're reordering Washington. Conservatives have said they want small government for decades. We're going to try to give it to you now in one fell swoop, and things like that. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, just transferring the post office to the Commerce Department. Yeah, Commission day. But I mean, he doesn't. I don't think he has the constitutional authority or the legal authority to do so. But go ahead and throw it out there. And if that means they got to fight about it in court a little bit, fine. I mean, the Postal Service is a money-losing operation. He knows it, and he'd like to reform that as well and find a way to gain control so they can reform that. His guy DeJoy, who he put that in there several years ago, is leaving, and DeJoy had been, he'd been trying to fix the post office. I mean, he'd been really trying to.
Right, like people are on him about the $9 billion in losses. It was $14 billion when he started.
Yeah.
So he's done a lot better than Megan Brennan did.
Yeah, look, I mean, the post office is just this monolithic enterprise, and it's not easy. You're dealing with these unions and all these arcane work rules and all the kind of agreement things I have, and then you've got tens of thousands of post offices across the country, and you're trying to find. It's like not all of them should be operating. I mean, my wife tells me all the time about the one that's a couple miles down the road for us. It's like doesn't understand why it's still open. Now that's been on the chopping block several times over the last few years, but it keeps surviving. Now, honestly, personally, it's a good thing for me to keep that open because that's where I have the AIA mail sent to, right? Otherwise I got to go like 4 or 5 miles down the road to the next post office and go pick up mail or whatever. And so, I don't want to do that, but it's so underutilized. It's ridiculous. Right. And yet it sits there and it, how much money, and you multiply that times a lot of other post offices. This is not the days of when people would just come to the post office and buy stamps and send out a lot of first class mail. First class mail has, volume has dropped precipitously. There are not a lot. How many, virtually all my bills are paid through my checking account. I don't put a stamp on anything anymore, for that kind of thing. We write about the only check we write every year, or during the year, is that the one to my wife's friend who comes in to cut her hair and color her hair and stuff like that every few weeks or whatever it is. But other than that, my checkbook is pretty idle from a physical check standpoint. Things have just changed dramatically. Matter of fact, if this lady had said go just pay me by Venmo or Zelle, I would probably just initiate the transaction that way, and just that way she gets her money quicker. And I can almost do away with my checkbook entirely from a physical standpoint. So it doesn't. There are things that have just changed in this world that that the post offices they have a hard time competing with the other services. The thing is that can you privatize the post office and make it work, because somebody's got to get to all those rural addresses. UPS and
okay, I was gonna say so. Yeah, I covered the post office for a long time, for 20 years. I wrote a bunch of stuff about the post office, and so you're getting into the actual problems. One is that you're right. The union contracts bind them to overpay some people and to have people they don't need. Now they've done a pretty good job on that. They're replacing the surge workers, right? Do the packages and so forth. Are generally not in a union now. They're generally hired. They're temporary hires, so to speak. and they're contractors, and they're not in. So it's the post office trying to get out of these, but they have the two big ones, NALC, National Association of Letter Carriers, and American Postal Workers Union, and they have these two big contracts, and the pension obligations are enormous, and the health benefit itself is enormous. So what you have is, we were talking about this yesterday, is like, it's a workforce, it's an aging workforce now, right? Because obviously they're not doing a whole lot of hiring of young postal letter carriers anymore because the demand's not there. So most of the people you're talking about, they're aging, but their job gives them enough exercise to where they're pretty healthy, right? And so when they retire at 65, they last for a pretty good while, right? Because they had a job that kind of kept them healthy. So so now you have a lot of retirees, you have a lot of medical expenses, you have an aging workforce that is overstaffed, that is really significantly overstaffed. You have the universal service obligation, which says that you will put mail in people's that you'll deliver mail every day, right? All to every address in the country, you'll get them their mail. So there's some exceptions to that now. They've got some people on 3 days a week mail delivery and so forth, and try to do that more with the more urban areas. But every time you do it, the people holler about, oh, they bring my drugs. I got to have my drugs that day. So there's stuff to be worked out there. I think that the need is oversold, but that's just me. They also have a problem. Biden tried to electrify the fleet. For the post office had these, they're called GARs, GAAR, Grumman, AA something, carriers, the little postal trucks you see going around. They're ubiquitous. Steering wheel's generally on the right, that little fold up thing in the back. Those are good unless you get into too much packages, and they have to send if you get too many big packages, those trucks are not built to accommodate it. So Biden's thing was to buy much bigger vehicles that were electrically powered. That was not an efficiency move. They didn't even pretend it was. So now they have to get out from under a bunch of contracts to buy electric vehicles, because even by the end of the Biden administration, they admitted that wasn't at all practical. So you're fighting, I think that DeJoy probably did as much to make the floor efficient. The handling of mail once it's in the system there's probably not a whole lot of big money left in making that more efficient, right? There might be some little ones that you can make, but that's not where the big cash is found. But you got to do something about the pensions, the salaries, the work rules, and the universal service obligation. I think, if you poll this stuff, high percentages of people would say, yeah, especially in rural areas, restrict the mail to 2 or 3 days a week to save, going into the most remote areas every day with vehicles, right? I don't know how much, of the country is really that remote anymore. So when you start saying, we'll let it 3 days a week, you're probably talking about not just remote rural, but rural and maybe even, exurban, suburban. So, with businesses obviously able to get it every day. The other thing that they have tried to do and is make it to where they had a bad habit before DeJoy of, they bring you your mail, they can go back and we got a letter for you later in the day. So then they make a pack of people who got stuff later in the day, and they go around and deliver all that, right? So you're sending another truck out. It's not my full mail truck. It's just got this thing that came late, and your thing that came late, and other people's thing that came late, right? And what he said is, we're going once a day. Get that mail on the first truck, right? I don't want to wait on it, and I don't want to make another trip for it. I want it there when the original mail goes out. They've had some success with that. But it's a tough nut to crack. You can put it under commerce. It doesn't really, they've run it before. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but neither is it a silver bullet to save it.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary of oversight on this. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that remember that we had years ago. I mean, there was a big fight about 6-day-a-week delivery, which has been sacrosanct. And I'm like, I understood
care
that.
less if it comes on Saturday.
Yeah, I understood that before because for a long time, because I had I owned some stocks and I had a bunch of my mailbox at this time of year would just I'd get all these annual reports and all this stuff, and so there'd just be this ridiculous amount of mail volume coming into my house, along with bills. A lot of bills now come electronically and things like that too. So, but now, I mean, this past in a week's time, I don't know that I get more than 20 pieces of mail, maybe 15, 20 pieces of mail for the entire week. Would I miss the Saturday mail? No, not anymore. They could deliver the mail to me here 3 days a week, and I would adjust because it wouldn't fill up my mailbox. Right. Even when I put my mail on hold when I go away for a week, I get a stack maybe that thick, whereas it used to be like that or more, or they used to have to deliver it in a bucket. Times have changed, and there's just all the way the postal service is structured is structured for the wrong era, but right. So, but unfortunately,
so what it does to keep up, it attempts to compete in the package business.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the package business in the U.S. That industry has probably done more to advance efficiency than almost any other industry in the world. Is the American package shipping industry, right? So you're going against UPS and FedEx and those guys. Those are heavy hitters with a lot of money to spend on becoming more efficient. So it's hard to compete with them on it. They end up doing these things where, the one we had years ago where they were delivering for Amazon and they were doing it on Sundays and all this stuff. And so they got into this contract where they charged Amazon $2 a package, no matter what they were delivering, and some of the packages were costing like $3.46 to deliver. So if you're losing almost $1.50 on out of that's what 75% of the price, right? That you're losing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you can't like it was like Amtrak. Remember the Amtrak got in a situation where the more people who wrote it, the more money they lost.
Yeah.
And so, how do you advertise? Like, oh, I really don't. We're kind of dangerous. Sometimes there's wild dogs on the trains. I mean, I don't really know what you do, right? So, I mean, that's kind of where they are. It's like the less use them, the better.
Yeah. All right. That was an interesting kind of side note on this, because it's just there's an example where I think Elon Musk is probably chomping at the bit to say,
and I think it's like it's kind of a whole government thing that they're saying, let's look at these institutions that we've been just rolling over and doing the same thing for 100 years and see if we need to change how we do some of this. And that one's obvious, right, for picking, but there's others too.
Yeah. All right. Next up here. So Trump just issued an executive order on he wants to require proof of citizenship for voter registration in federal elections. I don't have a problem with this. I'm not sure exactly the legality and how this works. I mean, the states control a lot of election process, but I mean, if there's a federal form, the feds control it, right? I mean,
well, the feds can make certain rules on how federal elections are staged. But you're right. Election law is almost all state law, and I'm not sure that Trump's got to be very careful how he does this. But there are options to him. There's not zero options. It's like the thing of how the 21 became the national drinking age, right? I mean, the federal government could not force states to change the drinking age either. So what they said is, you won't, that's fine, but if you don't change it by such and such a date, you'll lose your highway money, right? Do you remember that? So there were states like DC said, screw it, we don't get any highway money anyway, right? So they didn't change, right? Remember, people used to go to Dixie Liquors there right over the bridge, and it was called a blood border, and because that was quick access for Virginia and Maryland. You could just disappear back down the line, right? And in Louisiana, I don't know, I don't know if you know about this, but like Louisiana, drinking is a big part of the tourism there, like it or not, but that's kind of what New Orleans and Mardi Gras and all this stuff is. They're parties, right? So they said, no, we're not changing it. So the federal government, like, bros, you really got to change it. You're going to lose highway money. And they're like, so it means more to us to have 18 able to drink than your highway money. So it finally got to the point where they did cut the highway money. So Louisiana went on about a year and a half without any federal highway money coming in at all. They had 2 interstates at that time in Louisiana. They've since built a third. They had 3. Now they built 4. But the main 2 are I-10 and I-20, right? There are rest areas along those highways. So the Louisiana, which is perennially broke, ran out of money to service the rest areas. So then the federal government said, "Oh, if you don't have rest areas working, then we put gates up on your interstates, right? So we will close 10 and 20 all the way across Louisiana." So at that point, they gave in and they said, "I'm 21, you're 18. I can buy the beer and hand it to you." Right? Not you can't buy it, but I got to be there and hand it over. You can possess it. You just can't buy it. So they went a few more months and they said, okay, we're going to close it, like next Tuesday. And finally the legislature said, okay, 21. So it was a long drawn out process.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, to me, with a lot of things that Trump does, is like, if he manages to get this, if he clears the legal hurdles and makes it happen, that's great. But on the other hand, he still kind of checks off a box saying, I went and tried to do this,
Right.
That's what I think. A lot of things
he tells all the voters, I tried for voter integrity. Look who blocked me. Look who stood up against me.
Right. So this is, I think these are interesting, smart maneuvers that they're doing, saying like, okay, we talk about doing this, I'm going to issue an executive order. We'll see if it flies. But in the meantime, I can say, that I tried to do this, and who stopped it.
Yeah, his superpower is getting the other side to argue the 20 side of a bunch of 80-20 issues. They're over there, no, we don't want voter integrity. That's bad.
Right. Well, I mean, that's where Chuck Schumer's trying to all this continuing defense of how he got the Democrats to vote for the continuing resolution, is that they had there was no choice for them, right? I mean, if they voted against it, what happens to them?
You're voting for the shutdown. You take all the blame. You can't stop it, right? That's when they decided, was they realized they will be blamed for a shutdown. And it was every previous shutdown since I've been following politics has been blamed on the Republicans.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like the Democrats did not want to own that at all, because they've made a life, a career out of blaming Republicans for the shutdown, and if it comes back on them, that's not good look for them either. So more problems for the Democrats on that. Now this is one, we're running out of time here, but I love this one. Which is Greenpeace lost this court decision, $667 million, give or take, to Energy Transfer for all their shenanigans, all the stuff they did on the Dakota Access Pipeline, and so I don't know what the appeal process, if there is one or whatever.
But they've appealed it. So there are 3 Greenpeace entities, and like 400 of the 600 goes to USA Greenpeace. So just like different levels of involvement they had in this. But those people went and sabotaged people's property, made up a bunch of lies about the water and all that kind of stuff. And, they set this company back a long way, and the company provided a lot of jobs and money in that part of the country, on basically what were lies, right? I mean, you can take their side, but they were lying, right? Also, in Montana a couple of years ago, a bunch of parents sued on behalf of their kids, saying our kids were deprived of a global warming free environment by these evil energy companies. So Oregon tried to do it. The parents tried to do it in Oregon. and that lost. They were told pound sand. So courts are, and I think the fight ninth restored Trump's ability to deport illegals, right? The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Ninth Circuit. So just so so remarkable things are happening. And like you mentioned this earlier, but yeah, there's a bunch of cases up there of people trying to stop him from firing employees and stop Doge from looking at records and so forth. These are people trying to get in the way of what are clearly legit executive authorities, and they'll lose. So, like, you just got to bide your time. Everybody's all mad at this Judge Boasberg and who's mad about the Venezuelans and so forth. The Trump administration will win. They'll make 95 on that test. They won't make 100, but he doesn't have the ability to stop national security stuff from happening, and that's about to get explained to him.
Yeah, and as I understand on the whole Greenpeace thing too, is that the judge basically said, no, I mean, to me, it seems clear that you actually trained these people what to do. You were not separated. There was no degrees of separation here. You trained them to have these heinous activities. Therefore, you are liable for what they did.
Right. And you fed them with the bad information they acted on. Right. You're the one who told them the lies that got them to do this.
Yeah. So you cannot say that they acted, we did not know they were going to act like that or whatever. We had no knowledge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they couldn't separate themselves from that. But that could effectively, that'll decimate Greenpeace if it holds up.
Right. That's right.
That's a huge number. But
which what? That's one of those ones that go woke, go broke.
Yeah.
Greenpeace was started by some really good people with some really good things in mind, and it's been completely perverted to leftists politically.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the thing. That's unfortunately what happens in a lot of these cases. All right. I'm going to throw. I just want to throw this out. I didn't put it on the list, but I just had to throw this out because I had forgotten about it when I made up the list. But I remember it, was announced. There was a story this week about how Trump was floating the idea of corporate sponsorship for the White House Easter egg roll. And I just, I just thought it was, so it made me actually dig up one of my Easter eggs from the White House. So this is from 1990 for George and Barbara Bush and everything like this. And I'm just thinking like, think about the possibilities. The White House lawn with a bunch of little extra tents with the giveaways from Tesla and a bunch of other places.
That's right, Elon. We're going to be counting on you to take a big sponsorship.
Yeah, take a big sponsorship. Yeah,
you don't want to be a silver sponsor here. You want to be a gold elite sponsor.
Yes, the Tesla White House Easter egg roll.
Absolutely.
And with a Tesla logo on the Easter egg.
Tesla / Meta.
Yeah, Tesla. Well, there's enough real estate on this thing, that you can do it.
Make it look like NASCAR, man. Just
right, exactly. We see those jackets that people wear from events, and they've got like 20 sponsors on the back of their T-shirt. You could do this.
Yeah, that's us, man. We need that money.
All right. I thought I had to do that part. All right. Take us out.
Let's see here. Yes, Coulmbia capitulated to the Trump administration, and they're starting to straighten up their act. People are realizing they're very serious about it. Mia Love passed away, former Utah congressman, died 49 years old of cancer. That's what do you call it? RIP. Sherrod Brown would be a viable candidate for governor, probably not senator, probably better chance at governor. I guess DeWine is out after this term. It's a place that kind of elects moderates anyway. This is not really a strong. It's been a lot of moderate Republicans in recent years, right? So it looks like a Republican state, but it's not Alabama. It's a different brand of Republican. I didn't hear what Jasmine Crockett's explanation was for her Hot Wheels remark, but I think we probably know. what it was.
Well, I mean, and she got a lot of criticism, well deserved, because from the disability community, right? It's like, you do not say things about anybody in a wheelchair. I mean, it's like,
come on, man.
I mean, even Van Jones called her out on this. It's like, it's just another example of how the Democrats are just totally in disarray on things.
Yeah, they're completely bitter, and until they get out of that, until they get where they're for an event, we're convinced the other team is better, sight unseen right now. Right.
All right, great. We've run out of time, so please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again next week. And I guess we'll be heading into April, right? So maybe it'll be more spring-like.
Yeah, opening day tomorrow, right? Baseball.
Yeah, baseball. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, Chevrolet. All right, everyone. Have a good one. We'll see you around.